around 25 degrees out, and I wanted to give a shout out to Homestead Tessie. She was out in the same kind of temperature without a coat on, her cheeks quite red, and doing her laundry. Hey, shalom, sister. I did my laundry too. My sheets are hanging up there half frozen, but at least they got rinsed. And I'm back to sort of a walk and talk because Pastor's using my tripod this morning. And I have been requested to make a video on weak husbands. I get it that some people would find it offensive that I'm a woman talking about weak husbands. And again, I'm not claiming to be anything other than an older woman with 30 plus years of marriage under my belt and about 30 years of believing in Jesus as Messiah. So those are my credentials. I don't claim to be a pastor or anything like a pastor. I claim to be an older woman with silver in my hair, trying to pass on a little wisdom. And this person wanted my opinion, so I'm going to give it. Weak husbands are manifesting themselves these days as those guys who stay living with their parents, which is definitely in, I would say, opposition to Genesis 2. I believe it's around verse 24, might be verse 18, somewhere in there, that says, you shall leave your parents' home and cleave to another. You shall is not exactly a commandment, but it's pretty darn close. So that means, men, you are supposed to go out on your own. And hopefully your parents trained you up for that. And if they didn't train you up for that, hopefully you were training yourself up for that. Our society is one of the richest, most varied societies in the world, and there are plenty of opportunities for you to get training and education on going out and becoming your own person. So the weak man is the one who won't obey God. And you shall in Genesis is one of the places he instructs you. Another one is that you shall work from sunup to sundown. And by the sweat of your brow will you eat your bread or earn your bread. So you need to do some kind of work from sunup to sundown. Now, define the work. The word would define the work as something that makes you sweat, but also that you are going to provide for your family. So it's got to be something productive. And I've met men who are as varied as, as women are, who are interested in everything under the sun. However, if your interest is playing video games all day long and you cannot earn a living from doing that, then that's not your work. There are other, Pastor Joe has done videos on it, and he can fill you in on the finer details. So that's a weak husband. I've already talked about the marriage contract in the word. You are to love your wife. Now, there's a big difference between loving her and allowing her to rule over you. You, as a man, are not supposed to let your wife rule over you. However, love, as Christ had for his church, was for him to give up his life for the church, for him to pay whatever price it was that we, and it's a death penalty, that we incurred upon ourselves by our sinning, and he willingly gave up his life for that. He also, as I said in another video, opened himself up to ridicule and scorn, had people questioning him and putting up with hardship in his life for his church. And he also taught his church. He was constantly putting forth teaching. So he didn't want his church ignorant. He wanted his church to have some basis to their belief. And he based all of what he was trying to point people to back to the Old Testament and the prophecies that foretold of him coming, to understand his legitimacy within the whole view of God, because he knew he wasn't coming. He was coming at a time when there was already a history for the belief system there. Weak husbands, not earning enough for their families, not providing the godly leadership, not teaching their family how to behave according to the word, blaming the woman. You don't blame your subordinate for what's going on with you. You got to make sure your relationship with the person above you is going correctly. Those are my 3 big things. Now, if your husband is weak, I believe, again, based on scripture, Moses being one example, and he was not being weak at the time, he was being busy. But that you don't support him in his weakness. You don't go out and get yourself a job for your household. You don't take on his duties because he's not doing them. You withdraw yourself under the leadership of a male relative, or maybe a pastor, but I don't think Christian pastors know what they're doing. But like your grandpa or your uncle or someone of faith that is solid, you withdraw under their leadership and protection, like Ruth and Naomi did under Boaz, until he gets himself together. Because guess what, people? You can change. I've already done videos on that. All you have to do is think you're going to change, and you're changing already. So if you support him in his disobedience, then he's not going to change. You need to withdraw yourself and wait for him, pray for him, and hopefully he will go to his spiritual leadership and get himself righted, recover. Maybe not having his wife there handing him warm pizza and cold Coca-Cola will wake him up to, hey, I'm hungry and I'm kind of dirty and I want to stop playing video games for a few hours and I want to rest and take a shower and maybe find some food. I'm not guaranteeing it's 100% because people are imperfect. But if it were my situation, that's what I would do. I would just wait. And as I've said before, we've seen relationships where when people start working on themselves, then they can come together as a couple, and when they do it in God's way, it works pretty well for them. Your word, and search these things out for yourself. Use the mind that the Lord gave you to see the truth and pray to him that he shows that truth to you. This subject matter is getting harder and harder for me to be an absolute about. I talked to Pastor about it, and he said, if you're married to a man, you are still to obey him whether he's laying there on his rear end playing video games or not, because your half of the contract is biblical obedience. But he did agree with me that you do not take on the husband's role. You do not do his jobs. You do not go get a job to support the family. That's his job. And he also said, and I didn't say it, so I think it's worth mentioning. Of course it's worth mentioning. It's from my pastor. Is that if you're the woman, you should talk to your husband about it. You should say to him, hey, the roof needs fixing and we're running out of money and we're running out of food. But when I brought up the point about if the husband is not doing his half, go back and live with your family, or if you have no family at all, maybe a married brother and sister's house. I mean, you don't want to cause dissension there. Or maybe another woman's house, really, to do your waiting, like Naomi and Ruth did, and then they find Boaz. But they're together for a while. He said that would be all right, too. You could try that. There's one more case that I can discuss. It's the one about being unequally yoked. I believe being unequally yoked means you have married a non-believer, not that you married a believer who is being disobedient. I think it's two different things, and the Bible is clear on that. If you marry an unbeliever, your example of being a faithful person to God and, in my opinion, to your husband will win him over to God. It's like being the best servant. That's also an example given in the Word, where you are to be the best servant in the house, and then the master of the house looks at you and says, why are you a good servant? Why aren't you like this unruly mob of the rest of them? What is it about you that makes you different? And that's what wins the master over as well. Saying to me, that's why it's so important that you look at the person you want to marry and judge their character. And that's why you need your parents, if you have them there, to help you. Because if you're young, you may not know what to be looking for. So you need some input from someone you can trust who has, like your father, like your mother, like your grandma, like your grandpa, who can tell you the character of the person who you are thinking of linking yourself with for your entire life. A weak husband is going to be showing those weak attributes before you ever go to an altar or decide you're going to join yourselves together. He's going to show those things more than once. Don't ignore them. Look at them objectively and make sure you think about who you want your spouse to be.